So it's very obvious when you're seeing this Earth from far away how much light we produce at night, because you can see all the cities of the world, all the coastlines, very, very obvious yellow lights of kind of the classic sodium street lighting. It's everywhere. Some cities are more careful, and you can see that because seen from space, they're not as bright. But there is a lot of light coming out of the Earth. It's actually a way we can tell that there's people living there. When we fly over the ocean, of course, it's completely black. So that side of the Earth is very, very dark. As far as the moon is in the sky, the moon itself is bright, of course, but because there's no air, of course, in space, it doesn't diffuse that light. So that doesn't keep us from seeing the stars. So basically, we can see the stars all the time, whether the sun is up or not. Just a matter of whether your eye is attuned to it. So light pollution, yes, it's visible from space, and I think it's an issue that we can tackle. It's a very practical issue. Would allow everybody on Earth to have the beautiful spectacle of a starry night. A lot of people's interest in science starts like that as children, looking at the night sky. That was my case.
Merci pour la réponse, David.
Thank you for your answer, David. Now it's the time of the young people.
Nous savons que la recherche lors des missions spéciales.
We know that research from space research produces important developments. Now that you've been several months in space as a medicine for the ESS, do you see concrete applications for telemedicine for isolated communities that are isolated from Canada and the world? Well, it's a personal interest of mine. Before being an astronaut, I was a doctor in Grand'Anse du Québec, so I am well aware of the need for isolated communities to have access to medical teams and to be able to be as autonomous as possible. And so when we develop technologies for telemedicine or remote medicine, this will become very useful for to apply on Earth what we've learned in the space vehicles or spacecraft. There's a sort of a T-shirt that we can wear, which tells you what the pressure, respiration rate, temperature is, and this will help for diagnosis of patients. And so that would be very useful on land. And so there's a technological development that is unceasing, and this is one very good example of space technology. But the challenge is so great that there's many ways in which it can benefit Earth.
What do you hope will be Canada's biggest contribution to space exploration in the next decade?
So as you know, Canada is committed to remain part of this big worldwide impulse to continue exploring, to go back to the moon, to eventually go to Mars. And I hope that we will continue down that path, because it's great for everything in Canada. It's great mostly for people. I think, you know what, our greatest contribution to the space program, of course, has been robotics and our astronaut program and all the research that we've done in space. But behind that is people. It's the great scientists, engineers, technicians, mathematicians, pilots that it kind of encourages. A lot of people decide to pursue a career in the field of science, technology, medicine, engineering, maths, all that, because they were inspired by the space program. So maybe our greatest contribution is the amazing people that are part of the space program in Canada. And I can tell you, wherever I go around the world, Canadian space people are well respected. Our work is well respected, wherever they be it at NASA, in Japan, in Europe, in Russia, and that's so our people are our greatest assets.
In the case of a solar storm, where do you take cover? Unfortunately, in the case of a solar storm, where do you take cover? Well, unfortunately,
Alors, on peut se réfugier dans nos...
We can take cover in our sleeping areas. It's a little bit like a closet. It contains sleeping bags. The walls are thick and they protect us against solar radiation. And of course, we have devices aboard to be able to calculate the amount of radiation to tell us if we're in danger. However, the Earth's magnetic field actually protects the space capsules, space station. But when we go further away from the Earth's magnetic field toward Mars, we will then be fully exposed to solar radiation, and we're going to have to think about how to protect the crew. Perhaps we'll be able to have certain additions to the walls to protect us additionally. We often hear that astronauts often realize how Earth seems fragile from space. Thanks to our space programs, can we find solutions for climate change? I think the greatest contribution of the space program is the conscience of the appearance of the Earth from the images of the Earth taken from space. What we see, we think that this is the reality, but when we came to space, we were struck by how beautiful and fragile Earth is. So this accumulation of consciousness, this perspective that we gained from space is perhaps the greatest contribution that the space program has given to environmental consciousness. But of course, from satellites, we're able to survey the evolution, the changes to the ecology and of the climate. And this helps us to give the basis for taking corrective measures if we wish to. We can also surveil what is happening with the atmosphere, the effects of the solar wind, of radiation. And so the space program is the center to be able to maintain our Earth in good condition. Aboard the space station, have you worked with robots?
Bien sûr, le robot spatial.
Certainly, the space robots, the most celebrated or famous one is the Canadarm. It's one that helps us to assemble the station, and the station consists of several modules. And the assembly of those parts were set up into space at the astounding speed of 8 kilometers per hour, and they were assembled together by the Canadian robot. So this is the most famous robot, but we see robots everywhere. Every device aboard the station has motorized parts of it, and so it's a part of our everyday lives. Even on Earth, we begin increasingly refrigerators, intelligent telephones. All of this tells us that informatic engineering is becoming an increasingly important part of our daily lives. Are you tired of eating dehydrated food?
On vient juste d'avoir justement.
We have just received aboard the Russian progress, which came with new food. So we have a little bit of a change. It's rather fresh. We're able to eat apples, which is excellent. So the time and time we get fresh food that arrives. But you know, the dehydrated food can taste really good. If you take a package of dehydrated food that was produced by my wife. So we have a chance then to try some family food, which I was able to receive on board. And these are part of the space victuals that I share with my space colleagues here in the station.
What has been made of the 3D printer on the station?
So we make several tools with it, actually. So, for example, we made like a heads-up display to which we can attach a regular laptop. So we're starting to get smarter about how we can use this. But it's basically to make tools. And we even have the next generation of the 3D printer. It's the refabricator that can recycle things that have been made out of a 3D printer. So we could go imagine this cycle where we make new tools out of old tools. On the way to Mars, that will be very, very important. So we're more independent.
Our grandparents and our parents were alive during the exploration of the moon. I was wondering whether current research will enable us one day to explore Mars within our lifetimes. Yes, I think so. It's within the spirit of humanity to want to always engage in exploration. That's what pulled us out of the caves, helped us to explain planes, go to sea, to invade ships and boats and airplanes. Every time that there's a new development, it expands our perspective of who we are. And so thanks to these progressives developments through science, through the arts, and exploration, we don't need to put all of our researches in that, but a fair amount of it will help us to develop and generate more and more aspects to our civilization. We are perhaps, we are able to do so, of course, increasingly with safety in mind. I think the first astronauts who will go to Mars are already alive. These are children or young adults. It could be you if that's your dream. It would be absolutely right to pursue your dream in this regard. Do pneumatic items function in space?
Alors, la pneumatique, c'est-à-dire
well,
les machines qui sont basées
pneumatic items are the basis for the use of machinery that uses air and gas. We don't use them very much. We use them somewhat within the station. Hydraulic is the basis for a lot of the equipment that we use, but it's not particularly visible. Outside of the station, for example, the spacesuits are pressurized, and those are, of course, examples of pressurization, and that's an example of pneumatics at work. Is being an astronaut is it a dangerous work? And if so, why have you chosen to do this work? It's not a philosophical question, you know, it's a real one. It is dangerous, but there are a lot of other jobs that are dangerous. The idea of danger means that you just have to pay attention to what you're doing. For me, when I'm afraid of something that tells me that it's dangerous, it signals an alarm within me that means I have to pay attention. And so I tell myself, prepare yourself, be sure the equipment is ready, use it. We do every day things that are inherently very dangerous. For example, we might drive on a high-speed highway. We don't think about it, but we've been able to master driving skills. We have equipment that is well-suited to promote safety on the highway. And so we're able to reduce the dangerous aspects of what we do. The same is true in space. I'm confident in my training and in the equipment on Earth, the teams on Earth that maintain the space station in good condition. And because of this technological and technical knowledge and prudence, we're able to do things while reducing danger. Can we bring things from space or from Earth back to? Well, I brought on board certain things that are important to me, and I will then bring them back to give them to friends. There are parts of the station, of course, we cannot, that are necessary here. Everything that's here, we need it. There's nothing that is superfluous or extra. But I've brought personal objects with me to bring them back to Earth and to distribute them to friends and colleagues. And with regard to moon, we've already brought parts of the moon back to Earth. We did that especially during the Apollo missions. We brought a lot of things back from the moon to the Earth. What is the purpose of the research on which the space agency, Canadian Space Agency, is working within the International Station? Well, research that we do on board covers many subjects in physics, astrophysics, the science of materials, material science, but the Canadian agency, Space Agency, especially works on biomedical and medical aspects. This is important because being in space is not good for your health. It accelerates your aging, and all the problems that an astronaut experiences with the heart, with the eyes, with all the parts of the body, the respiratory, this resembles real illnesses which develop very quickly within people on board. So we're the perfect guinea pigs for medical research. Everything that can happen within an astronaut is something that can be then transmitted to Earth in order to be able to help space, or rather medical developments and medical research on Earth. If an astronaut has a birthday in space, do you have a birthday cake for him or her?
Ce serait le fun de pouvoir faire des gâteaux.
That would be nice to be able to produce cakes, to make cakes here. I had my birthday in January in space, and so my colleagues rolled out some biscuits, and so we used the biscuits, the cookies, with candles to simulate a birthday cake. That was we tried to imitate as much as possible the normal feasts and celebrations, but unfortunately we have no cake in space on board the station. What was your greatest, during your career, what is the greatest challenge that you've experienced as an astronaut? The greatest challenge that I ran into was the management of priorities, because there's such a varied training. We cannot allow ourselves to do only one thing in depth. We have to find a balance in one's work, within one's family, one's friends, one's personal life, because, in fact, it's when you live a balanced life that you live best. And so there are many things, many slots that have to be checked. Make sure that every square is in the green or normal zone. If one of these is red, on the other hand, then there's something that needs to be corrected. We cannot allow ourselves to follow only a single parameter as if we were an animal, for example. So it's important to maintain balance, and that's how we increase our own efficiency in doing so. So this is the last question. This is all the time that we have with you today.
Hey, you're watching NASA TV, on the air and online every day, on this planet and beyond.
morning, April 8th, for live coverage of the third spacewalk that has taken place over the last few weeks. This is a live feed from the space station's Quest airlock, where astronauts are continuing procedures to prepare themselves and the airlock for today's extravehicular activity, the 216th spacewalk in the history of station assembly and maintenance. Today's spacewalk is scheduled to last approximately 6.5 hours and was planned to begin at 7:05 a.m. Central Time, but the crew is currently running about 30 minutes ahead of schedule and may make it out of the hatch earlier. We're live from Mission Control at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, where the Orbit 2 team is coming in to take over from the Orbit 1 team, who has been walking the crew through their suit up, pre-breathe, and other spacewalk preparations this morning. Leading the teams today is Flight Director Rick Henfling. He will be in contact with all the flight controllers on the ground throughout today's spacewalk. You can see Rick there in the gray suit on the right of your screen. To his left is Flight Director Zeb Scoville handing over today's procedures. Capcom today is Doug Wheelock. He is on hand to speak with the station astronauts and will hand over communications to the ground IV once the Quest hatch is closed and depressurization is underway. He also serves as today's Capcom for the other astronauts on board the space station. You can see NASA astronauts Nick Hague and Christina Cook maneuvering Canadian Space Agency astronaut David Saint-Jacques into the crew lock area of the Quest airlock. They're currently in the equipment lock, where they've been getting ready for pre-breathe this they've been pre-breathing this morning, purging the nitrogen from the astronauts' bodies, preparing them to breathe in the 100% oxygen environment, which they will be immersed in for the next several hours. Already in the crew lock is NASA's Anne McClain. You can see she's wearing red stripes around the legs of her spacesuit. That's designating her as EV1 today. This is McClain's second spacewalk, having only completed her first just a few weeks ago with colleague Nick Hague. You can see on the left of your screen. She's the 13th woman to walk in space and already has 6 hours and 39 minutes of time outside the hatch. Joining her is David Saint-Jacques on what will be his first spacewalk, becoming the fourth Canadian to perform a spacewalk, preceded by Steve McClain, Chris Hadfield, and Dave Williams. As we mentioned, this is the third of 4 spacewalks this year, and several have just taken place in the last couple of weeks. A Russian spacewalk will be conducted on May 29th by Oleg Kononenko and Alexei Ovchinin. The current crew on board consists overall of 3 Americans, 1 Canadian, and 2 Russians. We've got the USOS crew in the hatch right now, and as you can see, this is the full crew. To the left is David Saint-Jacques, one of today's spacewalkers, and then joined by NASA astronaut Anne McClain to his right. Cosmonauts Oleg Kononenko and Alexei Ovchinin are also on board. To their right is NASA astronaut Nick Hague and NASA astronaut Christina Cook, who both completed a spacewalk just last week. space station is currently flying over Ghana in West Africa, about 255 statute miles above the Earth. They're currently in an orbital daytime. Throughout the day, we'll see the space station go through periods of both light and darkness as it orbits the Earth, approximately every 90 minutes. We're going to take a look at an animation detailing what the spacewalkers will be working on today, but there have been some changes since its creation, most notably at the beginning. At the start of the spacewalk, McClain and Saint-Jacques will continue the work that has been conducted over the last few weeks on the station's batteries. So far, 6 lithium-ion batteries have been installed to replace 12 nickel-hydrogen batteries. However, one of the lithium-ion batteries installed in the 4A Power Channel's Integrated Electronics Assembly, or IEA, along with the battery charge-discharge unit, was found to not be charging after installation on the March 22nd spacewalk. Today, these spacewalkers will stack an adapter plate on top of another to make room for the nickel-hydrogen batteries to fill its spot, and they'll also secure the new battery charge-discharge unit, or BCDU, that robotics controllers moved into place last Tuesday. Let's take a look at what else the astronauts will accomplish today.
US EVA-54 will be conducted by McClain, EV-1, in the red stripes, and David Saint-Jacques, EV-2. EV-1 will lead out of the airlock to the nadir side of the US lab and temp stow the bag. EV-2 will be going over the top of the lab. They will meet up at the same work site, but they'll take different paths to deconflict their safety tethers. After going over the top of the lab, EV-2 will temp stow the bag on the zenith side of the US laboratory. From here, both will converge on the port side, forward end of the US lab, where they've got a MMOD, or micrometeoroid debris shield, that they'll release. The crew will work to release that shield and the underlying insulation, then connect the cables underneath. They'll set up their bag with that cable and work to clear the site. They'll remove an electrical connector which will allow them to access that shield, as well as removing a translation aid, known as a gap spanner. Once that's complete, they can access that shield and get underneath to connect an Ethernet cable that will be utilized to route to various parts of the truss for future wireless Ethernet connections. This will spread wireless Ethernet connectivity to payloads on the outside of the International Space Station. EV-1 will disconnect the cable, then take the new cable from EV-2 and hook it up under the shield. Then they'll replace all the hardware that they previously removed. From there, EV-1 will transition to the Node 1 nadir worksite and remove another MMOD shield and route cables for a power upgrade of the space station. These jumpers will be utilized in conjunction with the other ones that EV-2 will be routing. This will allow the station to react to external power failures by reconnecting IVA jumpers inside the space station, as opposed to having to spend an EVA to reconfigure the power system. Now, EV-2 will work from the zenith side of Node 1, directly above EV-1. EV2 has a longer set of jumpers that will run from the forward side of Node 1 routing into the S0 truss through the MLI, where he will temp stow those for EV1 to pick up later. EV2 will wire tie them along handrails to keep them out of the way of any future EVAs. Once finished routing that cable, EV2 will come down and help EV1 secure the micrometeoroid orbital debris shield over the Node 1 Nadir worksite. From there, the crew will transition back to the airlock to pick up bags for the next task. EV1 will be heading up to the S0 truss to pick the cable that EV2 had previously left. This is the one just installed through the MLI on the aft side of the truss. EV1 will enter the bay and continue routing it inside of the truss, separating the blue and red cables. The blue cable will transition to the next bay over to the right, while the red cable will be temp stowed on a handrail for installation at a future time. Once those cables are connected, EV1 will exit the truss bay, enter the adjoining bay, and complete the routing of the blue cable. With the connection of the blue cable, that completes one leg of that redundant power path that will enable the Space Station Canada Arm 2 to utilize redundant power supplies, if needed, in the event of a power failure. At the same time, EV1 is connecting those cables, EV2 will have picked up what is known as the Bartolomeo Training Slip-Off Protection and head to the front side of the European Space Agency's Columbus module. These are plugs that are going on into the end of the trunnions. These are the trunnions that were used to hold the module in the Space Shuttle payload bay for its ascent. These plugs will widen the end of the trunnions to help in the installation of the Bartolomeo platform that'll be launched by ESA at a later date. EV2 has installed one and is moving to the outboard worksite to install the second slip-off protection.
That's just a look at what the astronauts will be accomplishing today. They also have some time scheduled for some get-aheads and are hoping to get to those as well. You can see the crew is now totally in the crew lock portion of the Quest airlock. NASA astronauts Nick Hague and Christina Cook are still in the equipment lock portion. Throughout the day, we'll be answering questions from social media, so be sure to submit yours with the hashtag AskNASA. Our first question is, what are the measures being taken by the astronauts to avoid decompression syndrome? So far today, the astronauts have participated in a pre-breathe segment to help purge the nitrogen from their bodies. They will be breathing 100% oxygen. Pre-breathing consists of two phases. In the first, the crew breathes that 100% oxygen through a mask to begin purging the nitrogen. And in the second phase, the crew gets into their spacesuits and conducts something called the in-suit light exercise. They move their arms and legs ever so slightly, raising their metabolic rate to help speed up that processing of the excess nitrogen. That was cool. At the top of your screen, you can see Capcom's Tracy Caldwell Dyson and Doug Wheelock. These are both NASA astronauts, and they are currently communicating with the astronauts aboard the International Space Station. Behind them is Ground IV Jeanette Epps, another NASA astronaut who will be talking directly to the two spacewalkers as they move throughout their task today, walking them step by step through the spacewalk. Wheelock and Caldwell Dyson will hand over that communication once the Quest hatch is closed and depressurization begins in the crew lock portion. Flight Director Rick Henfling has just conducted a go, no-go poll for the spacewalk to begin, receiving the green light from all of the flight controllers.
Houston airlock, step 63.5. We removed serial numbers 0004 and 0017.
Copy, Nick. Those are good numbers. Thanks.
We've got some more Ask NASA questions before the crew closes the hatch and begins to depressurize the airlock. The first is dexterity an issue with the thickness of gloves and equipment? It is a little bit of an issue. At nominal pressure, the suit is about 4.3 pounds per square inch. To put that into context, the atmospheric pressure we're used to on Earth's surface is about 14.7 psi. That's also the pressure of the inside of the International Space Station with a mixed oxygen and nitrogen environment, again, much on Earth. The suits are kept at a lower pressure just to allow much more flexibility since the gloves are rigid, and it is a lengthy time working with those gloves, about 6.5 hours scheduled for each spacewalk. The next question is, what's the longest time that astronauts can spend spacewalking? From Emma. The longest single spacewalk actually occurred in 2001. NASA astronauts Jim Voss and Susan Helms spent just under 9 hours. It was about 8 hours and 56 minutes outside of Space Shuttle Discovery during STS-102. They did some maintenance work on the International Space Station, but typically, astronauts' spacewalks can last from 6 to 8 hours, and it really depends on their consumables, how much oxygen they are using, and how much carbon dioxide is being emitted. Astronauts Nick Hague and Christina Cook closing the hatch between the equipment lock section and the crew lock portion of the Quest airlock.
Houston airlock, we are complete with steps 70 and 71.
Copy, Nick. Thank you. Nice work to you and Christina. We are working step 72, and we meet you at the tail end of that step.
Wheels.
Currently in a satellite handover for the International Space Station as it continues to orbit the Earth at 257 statute miles. These temporary losses of communication or video are tracked, and sometimes the schedules are planned. The tasks are scheduled around these losses of communication.
Recording device install. Go ahead, space to ground 2. Hey, Alexei, going back to your question on how to position that device, the device in RO, basically just set it up where prescribed per the radiogram, get everything made it per the radiogram again. We're going to be activating it and testing it once you've done that. And after testing and after we receive the test video file, that video recording device in particular can be shut down, and we'll be working on getting you the answer to your question.
Хорошо, понял. У меня еще вопрос есть по видеорегистратору ИЗСО. Значит, я его направляю направление изображения на люк с грузовиком, и та розетка, которая, значит, указана.
EV1, EV2, and airlock, this is Houston. EV1 and EV2, you're now hot mic on Space to Ground 1. For Nick and Christina, we are complete with step 72 on the ground. You have a go to pick up in step 73.
And copy, Wheels. Okay, David, on the UIA, you're going to check that the depress pump power is off, OFF.
Depress pump power is off, OFF.
That you've got a depress pump enable LED on.
Enable is on.
And Houston airlock, we're looking for your go on step 76.
Airlock Houston, do you have a go in step 76?
Copy, we've got to go. So guys, we're going to move on to the depress cue card.
Copy.
And that was the green light from Mission Control Houston and the astronauts aboard the space station that they are go for depressurization of the airlock.
Switch pump power on, ON.
10 seconds for complete startup. Set for you, David. Set the depress pump man ISO valve to open. Expect alert tone.
Depress pump man ISO valve open.
C. You're both monitoring your suit P gauge. Stays less than 5.5. If it goes greater than 5.5, David, you'll stop the depress.
1 copy. 2 copies.
Depressurization of the crew lock portion of the airlock has begun.
LFP 13, 13.
Copy, David.
LFP 12.
Copy, 12.
LFP 11.
E11 on the pressure. Copy.
The crew lock continues to depressurize. It's currently under 10 psi. Started at 14.7, about what we're used to on Earth. At 5 pounds per square inch, the teams will pause the depressurization for a systems check and then resume it to vacuum.
LFP 9.
Copy, airlock pressure 9.
LFP 8.
Copy, 8 psi on the pressure.
FP7.
Copy. Airlock pressure is at 7 psi. Note for you all, when the crew lock is at 6 psi, you can expect an alert tone. Then when we're at 5 psi, David, at that time, you'll be putting the depressed pump man ISO valve to close when we reach 5.0.
2 copies.
Christina Cook snapping pictures of the astronauts in the crew lock as depressurization continues.
LSP 6.
Copy. 6.0.
.3 approaching.
Copy. 5.3. And as you're tracking, when you do see 5.0, we'll be taking the depressed pump man ISO valve closed.
Copy. Back me up in case my DCM has toggled to O2 position.
We'll do it. And David, we are seeing 5.0 on our end, so you have a go to take the depressed pump man ISO valve closed.
Depressed pump man ISO valve closed.
Copy. Now for both of you, we're going to be doing an automated leak check. So status until you see leak check question mark displayed, then yes for 2 seconds, and follow the displayed instructions.
EV1 is in leak check.
EV2 is in leak check.
Copy. EV1 and 2. Remember, keep us informed of the time remaining.
50 seconds.
Copy. 50 seconds remaining for EV1.
Same for EV2 now, 45.
Copy. 45 for EV2.
15 seconds left for EV2.
Copy EV2.
EV1 leak check complete.
EV2 leak check complete.
Setting O2 to EVA.
Copy leak check complete on both. And for both of you, checking your O2 actuators in EVA. We copied yours as an EVA for EV1.
It is now an EVA.
EV2.
Now an EVA for EV1.
EV2 moving to EVA.
And I have O2 position EVA on the DCM.
Repeat your last.
O2 position EVA on the DCM.
EV2 O2 position EVA. Checks EVA on the DCM.
Both of you have your O2 actuator in EVA. Dottie, for you, depress pump man ISO valve can come back open.
Depress pump man ISO valve open.
Copy, and for your awareness, we are now taking the emergency MPEP to open.
Copy.
Copy.
Emergency MPEP is open.
Copy.
Copy.
Again, monitor your suit pressure gauges stay below 5.5. If not, you'll stop the depress, David.
Copy.
After completing some scheduled system checks at 5 pounds psi, depressurization of the crew lock has resumed and will continue until it is a vacuum.
LRP 4.0.
Copy 4.0.
LRP 3.0.
Copy 3.0. And for your awareness, when we get to 2.0, you will be taking the depress pump man ISO valve to close.
Copy. Point 5 approaching.
Copy 2.5, and we're watching as well.
Point 2.
Copy 2.2.
2.0.
Copy 2.0. David, you're going to take the depressed pump man ISO valve closed.
Closed.
Copy closed. Now you will take action, the switch depressed pump power to off. OFF.
Depressed pump power off. OFF.
Copy off. OFF. You now have a go to report your initial tether configuration for egress. We'll be following along, as will the ground.
Okay, we'll start with mine. I have a right waist tether on my D-ring. It is just to my MWS. On my left D-ring extender, I have my safety tether pack. The red hook is gate closed slider lock black on black. My crew reel is unlocked. A yellow hook is gate closed slider lock black on black. That's connected to my anchor reel, which is unlocked. My anchor hook is on my MWS. Also on my left D-ring extender is my waist tether. It is anchored on my left D-ring extender, gate closed slider lock black on black. And the waist tether is connected to EV2's anchor hook. And I have both of those in front of me. They are both gate closed slider lock black on black.
I'll take over from here. My anchor reel is unlocked. It has the yellow hook closed black on black. The crew reel is unlocked. And it is the green hook, which is not locked. That is attached to my right during extender. The red hook, gate closed black on black. And finally, on my left during extender, I have a waist tether, gate closed black on black. Attached to the airlock during extender, gate closed black on black. I have an extra waist tether on the right during extender, gate closed black on black to my main workstation.
And EV1 also has the green hook is on my crew rail unlocked.
EV1 and EV2, Houston copies all. Good config.
Confirmation that David, Saint-Jacques, and McClain have all of the tethers necessary to venture outside, not only to keep them safe and attached to the space station, but also to keep any of the tools and equipment that they'll use attached to themselves.
And for the EVs, for your awareness, we are just waiting for the EV hatch pressure to be visible at less than 0.5 psi, and we'll take that from Anne when the time comes. And you can also expect an alert tone when the crew lock DPDT is near zero.
Copy, and the PSI on the EV hatch is just above 1.
Copy, around 1.0 psi.
82 copies.
EVs, for your awareness, it does look like we're tracking for a nighttime hatch opening, but it will soon be turning to day after you egress.
Copy. GPS ID reads 1, exactly 1.
See, exactly 1.0.
Depressurization continuing. The airlock is now under 1 pound per square inch. As the pressure in the airlock continues to fall, we can expect about 3 or 4 more minutes.
hatch PSID 0.6.
Copy 0.6.
EV hatch PSID reads 0.5.
0.5 on the EV hatch. You can take the EV hatch open and stow it.
Okay, in work.
And we are still showing you are in a night path, so reminder you can get your helmet lights on if you haven't already.
Okay.
2 copies.
Hatch is unlatched.
Copy unlatched.
Okay, the hatch is open and it is locked.
The hatch is open and locked. We are taking the emergency MPEV to closed.
Copy.
Emergency MPEV is closed, and that concludes the crew lock test. We can move into post depress, and TC, the test is yours.
Thanks, Christina. You and Nick did a great job getting them ready, and quite early, I might add. Anne and David, you two ready?
David. Good morning, Tracy. Great to hear from you. We're ready.
Good morning, TC. Ready.
It's great to be here with both of you. Let's start with the post depress step 1. On your DCM, both of you, take your power, switch to BAT, stagger the switch throws, expect a warning tone.
My display switch is functional.
Q.
Copy. David, on the UIA, take the switch power EV1, 2 switches to off OFF. Check power EV1, 2 LEDs, 4 of them are off OFF.
Power EV1 off, LED off. Power EV2 off, LED off.
On your DCM, both of you, you can disconnect your SCU. Install the DCM cover and stow your SCU in the pouch.
Work. And if you want to get the H2O is off message.
I'm for 82.
Copy, and that's expected.
Copy, and that's expected.
As you heard the reports, depressurization is complete and the thermal cover of the airlock is open.
Copy, Ann.
EV2, SCU is in the pouch.
Copy, David. Okay, David, for you, check the depress pump man ISOL valve is closed.
Depress pump man ISOL valve closed.
All right, both of you, on your DCM, Take your temp control valve to max hot.
Mark? You want is max hot? 2 is max hot.
Copy. Take your water switch to on.
EV1, water switch on. EV2, water switch on. And my DCM is blank, no bite.
Copy in. David, check DCM blank, bite off.
Blank, bite off.
All right, you guys can set your TCV as desired.
EV1, set 5. EV2, set 4.
Spacewalk has officially begun at 6:31 Central Time. That's 11:31 Greenwich Mean Time, the time used aboard the International Space Station, as the astronauts have switched their suits to battery power.
Just under 4.4. It's fluctuating as I move. At 4.3. EV2, 4.3.
Okay, those are good numbers. Copy 4.3 for both of you. Okay, guys, as Nana said, you guys are coming up on a sunrise, and so you can adjust your visors as you desire.
Okay.
And we're looking at good suit data for you guys, and so whenever you're ready, Ann, you can egress the airlock. I think the hatch already blew open.
Yes, thermal cover is open. And I'm egressing. I think this crew lock bag's going to have to now stay in.
As NASA astronaut Ann McClain, who is EV1, Spacewalker 1 today, with the red stripes on the legs of her suit, exits the Quest airlock, you will hear her communicating with NASA astronaut Tracy Caldwell Dyson as the ground IV.
Copy, Ann.